Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It's time for something a little bit different today. There is an upcoming MMO, Fractured Online, that I'm going to be discussing in this video. I'll put a link down in the description below for some more information, and if you're interested in getting yourself a copy of this game. Full disclosure, this is a sponsored video. I work together with Gamago, who are publishing Fractured Online, in coming up with this video. And I'm going to say I decline a lot more sponsorship offers than I take up. The difference here was that this was not one of those horrible mobile games that's full of pay-to-cheat microtransactions that jump in your face all the time with, hey, here's an encounter you can't beat, but for just $23, you can have a cheat code that allows you to bypass it. This game is very, very different to that, and that's why I felt that it would be a good match to do a sponsored video on. The game's monetization model is a box price, plus a monthly subscription, plus the option of purchasing cosmetics. I had a look through the things that are sold as cosmetics, and they are all genuinely cosmetics. There's nothing in there that looks like a power boost in disguise. If you don't have the subscription active, you can still play the game, but there'll be some limitations on your account. So basically, I would see this as being more in line with World of Warcraft circa 2010 than with anything that's coming out in either the MMO market these days or the mobile gaming market in particular. So once I looked into that, I was quite happy to do a sponsored video on it, especially once I saw how much Fractured Online has in common with a game I used to love but no longer play due to its monetization model now, which is EVE Online. EVE Online is a game that's pretty infamous for being brutally unforgiving when it comes to PvP. Now, Fractured Online takes a different approach there. PvP is still a big part of the game, but it's much more opt-in. Fundamentally, Fractured Online is a sandpark game. This means that you can set your own goals, and you can cooperate with other players to try and achieve those goals, and sometimes you and another group of players will end up in conflict over these goals. Now, one of the common criticisms EVE Online received in its heyday, and one thing that a lot of people found off-putting, was that you could get attacked by an experienced player when you were new to the game. Fractured Online gives you a degree of agency over how much PvP you want to sign up for. You can be a wildfolk, and if you choose to be a wildfolk, you're forced to be good aligned. You will in the future be able to elect to be a demon, and demons will be forced to be evil aligned. Note that demons are not yet implemented in the game, they're coming soon. Or alternately, you can go a human, in which case you've got the flexibility to be good, to be evil, or to go in between and be neutral. Your alignment setting grants protection from various types of PvP. Choosing to go good reduces the capacity of other players to engage in unsolicited PvP with you. Choosing to go evil gives them full flexibility to do so, but also gives you a few additional bonuses in exchange. And so you've got this flexibility to choose between risk and reward there. And also each of the 3 worlds that you can be in has its own unique rule set. So if you're in the Wildfolk area, then any demons that attempt to invade your realm will find their strength being sapped by the world itself. Ultimately, players are probably going to want to visit all 3 worlds, and you'll understand why when we get to how skill progression in the game works. However, this is not necessarily going to be a straightforward thing to do, especially because you're going to need to adventure outside your comfort zone, but you can build up in peace first if that's the way you want to play the game. Alternately, if you want to be a murder hobo from day one, you can be a murder hobo from day one. Now, Fractured Online is a game of what I would term tactical combat. Imagine a spectrum with chess at one end. Chess is a game that is all about tactics, where there is absolutely no timing involved. All that matters is your ability to see ahead, foresee what your opponent might do, and preemptively counter it. And then at the other extreme end of that scale, imagine a game like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, where a huge portion of the game comes down to your ability to fire on the correct frame while your scope is sweeping across the enemy's head, rather than 2 frames too early or 2 frames too late. Now, on this sort of scale, I would say that Fractured Online is roughly a 5. This is less tactical and more Twitch-based than EVE Online, but compared to games like Path of Exile or PUBG, it is far, far, far more tactical and far less twitchy. Some of the sorts of tactics you're going to want to work on are skill selection, target prioritization, and your decision to remain engaged in combat or attempt to disengage using various fast move skills that your character might have. These are some of the sorts of decisions that will result in either winning a battle or losing it and thinking, oh, that enemy was just at 5% life when it got me down. This is going to be the case in both player versus environment and player versus player encounters. Finally, though, we have what I think is the killer feature of Fractured Online, and that is its really, really unique progression systems. Like other sandbox MMOs like EVE Online, the social aspect is a big deal. Your reputation on the server matters, especially once you become a more well-known player. Are you respected by other players? Are you feared by them? Or do they mock you? Do they regard you as a trash talker that can't back any of it up? This is a part of progression that doesn't show up on your character sheet anywhere, but that actually does impact your ability to influence events and to influence the server more generally. Then you have gear, talents, and skills. And let's jump over into game and have a look through these different aspects in some detail. So one of the most unique features of Fractured Online that I've discovered so far is the character progression systems. Fundamentally, you have knowledge points, which are gained not by repeating the same content over and over, but by carrying out a diversity of content. So for example, if you kill 3 different types of goblins, you'll get a certain amount of KP for each one of them that you kill the first time. Then if you go back and kill more of those same goblins, you'll get a much smaller amount of KP. And ultimately, I think at some point you stop getting any knowledge points from them once you have become a complete master of goblins. The same thing applies to various sorts of raw resources you might find throughout the world. So for instance, the first time that you harvest a flax plant, you will receive 250 KP. The next time, you will receive nothing. You'll just get the plant fibers after that. But the first time you do it, you'll get knowledge points because you've learned something new. Now, knowledge points are a currency and you spend them in various ways. One way that you can spend them is to increase your stats, and this is done through talents. The talent system will look familiar to those of you that have played Path of Exile, and it will also look familiar to those of you that have played Final Fantasy X. Here, you're able to spec into specific stats. So energetic will increase your maximum mana pool, focused will increase your mana regen, resolute will increase your willpower. I've yet to work out what willpower does. Smart will increase your intelligence. This is actually a big deal in this game. Your core stats are very important. And then the second wheel seems to be larger versions of these first stats. Finally, after that, you then pick up some things that are more unique, like Cantrip Expert here, and there is also Mage Weapon Style and Mage Weapon Mastery. Lots of extra things that you can pick up as you're going through there. A number of talents are still being worked on, and so you'll find that there's plenty of them that you want to spec, but that there will be some that you can't spec as yet. Broadly speaking, these are divided into categories based on the different stats in the game, although I'm not certain that this is in exact one-to-one comparison with all of the stats that you might encounter throughout the game. That's something that would need to be learned through playing the game a little bit more than I've been able to do so far. Secondly, however, and probably much more unique, is the abilities system. When you fight monsters enough, you will have the ability to commit their skills to memory. For example, my character did not start with the Magic Missile skill. Magic Missile is something that I learnt from bandit sorcerers in the tutorial area. So you'll be given a quest to kill 5 of them, and once you've killed 5 of them, you'll have developed your knowledge of these monsters enough that you can actually buy their skills using your knowledge points. So you then become able to train their skills. So Magic Missile is probably the strongest skill that my character has at the moment, and that came from killing other monsters. Additionally, there's a number of things that I've unlocked the ability to learn, but that don't necessarily seem immediately useful to me. And I could be wrong here because I'm still learning the game as well. Nimbleness, I did actually train, and that was probably a mistake. Bleeding Strike is something that I've killed enough monsters that if I wanted to spec into this, I could. However, actually unlocking it requires the spending of 1,000 knowledge points. At this point, I feel I could do better with that 1,000 knowledge points if I was to invest in talents, or the thing I'm actually looking for, and something that I haven't yet unlocked, is Fireball. Fireball is something that is used against you by Goblin Fire Shamans. I've killed 3 of these things, and I believe that once I kill another 5 of them, I'll be able to unlock Fireball. Maybe I'm wrong about it being 5, maybe I'm going to need to kill another 13 of them. We'll find that out, but that's something that I'll be able to learn. Additionally, it seems like there's a number of much higher level skills. So you have Firestorm here, which is discovered by killing greater fire elementals. You have Ember Dragon Breath, which, surprise, surprise, comes from defeating Ember Dragons, and a whole lot of other skills along these sorts of lines that are far more fancy versions of what you start with. It appears to me that a lot of your character's power actually comes from your abilities. You'll be able to spec into a bunch of these at any given time. When you rest your character, you can then spec into 15 memory points worth of abilities. So I'm currently using 8 of my memory points, and that is to memorize the 5 skills that I start with as a mage, and also Magic Missile because it is really good. I will certainly be specking into things like Fireball when I get the ability. I don't know if you can exceed this 15 memory limit or not, but even if you can't, there's a huge amount of flexibility in the way that you can set up your character. So for a couple of concluding remarks, I want to talk about why it's worth getting in early on Fractured Online if the game sounds like it interests you. One of the things I really learnt from my time spent playing EVE Online was that the most interesting times to play that game were the times of large-scale player conflicts. I was never involved in any of the large alliances that would go to war with each other. Instead, what I would do would be a vulture on the sidelines. I would be an arms dealer. I would sit there finding myself a space, watching the various ships that were getting destroyed and saying, you know what? I can make more of those. Or, even more obnoxiously, I would say, you know what? Team XYZ just lost 45 of this ship. I know that the scarcest material needed for this is the quantum microprocessor, so I'm going to buy out the whole market of quantum microprocessors and I'm going to relist them at 25% higher price. And I would end up being a profiteer sitting on the sidelines of this war. And while the war was happening, I wasn't participating in it. It was certainly making my gameplay experience more interesting. Now, the thing with a blank slate environment is that this is the sort of time when these conflicts will be at their most dynamic and their most chaotic, and therefore their most interesting. That's why I think Fractured is worth giving a look to now. So once more, I have put a link down in the description below. And of course, one more reminder that this was a sponsored video. Thanks for your time, and may your knowledge points lead to an interesting character.